Those through my clothes, stubborn as regret. The key didn't fit, not anymore. Cold air cut my face as I stood on the porch. Through the lake house window, I saw them, Greg's whole family. Stubborn as regret, ate. Glasses raised, laughing. Their voices carried through the glass like I didn't exist. I pressed the key again. Metal scraped. No click. Stubborn as regret, someone had changed the lock. 6 years of hormone shots, frozen embryos, bank loans I'm still paying. And now this. I stepped back, stubborn owned. Whose stub regret, boots crunching dead leaves. The wind carried Greg's new cologne through the cracked door. Not the scent he used to wear. Not the man I thought I married. Inside, a chair sat empty. My chair. The one I'd always used at these dinners. Now filled by his younger cousin, stubborn as regret, the one his mother called the future. My stomach twisted. Guess I ain't legacy anymore. I wanted to knock. To shout through the glass. This is them on as regret. After 12 years you raised me, but I froze. Their laughter kept spilling out like I was a ghost on my own porch. Stubborn as regret, my hand tightened around the useless key. I could leave, take my pride, let them win, or I could stand here, feel every sting, and decide what comes next. The smoke stibble onto my clothes, stubborn as regret. Before I tell you how I fought back, let me know where you're watching from, and subscribe if you believe justice don't have to be loudy to be real. Stubborn as regret. The night I drove back to Lancaster, I didn't even turn on the radio. The silence felt heavy, like it had weight. Smoke stubborn as regret, and my hands gripped the wheel tighter with every mile. 12 years married, 6 years trying for a baby. Every hormone shot, every blood test. To my clothes, stubborn as regret, every early morning driven to Pittsburgh before sunrise. It all played back in my mind like a broken film reel. Those clinic rooms were always too cold. Stubborn as regret. Sterile walls, metal trays, the faint buzz of fluorescent lights. The nurse would smile, but I could see the pity in her eyes. Smoke, stubborn as regret. Each time another test showed nothing, Greg's hand would tighten around mine for a while. He used to wait with me after every cycle. The smoke over my clothes, stubborn as regret, bringing me coffee, pulling my blanket tighter when I shivered. By year 4, he stopped waiting. Said work couldn't wait, but I could. Stubborn as regret, our house grew quieter. No music, no laughter, just the sound of him leaving early, keys jangling, muttering about deadlines. His phone stayed face down. Sclothed, stubborn as regret. Buzzing late at night, one morning, I smelled something in his truck. A cologne I didn't recognize, and a faint scent of baby lotion. Stubborn as regret, I told myself I was imagining it. Stress, grief. But deep down, I knew something was off. The bills kept coming, loans stacked up. The stubs clung to my clothes, stubborn routine for treatments we couldn't afford anymore. I'd stay late at the hospital, pulling doubles just to keep us afloat. Greg never asked how I managed. So stubborn as regrets, he just started coming home later, tie loose, smelling like a stranger. I still kept trying, not for him but for me. I wanted something to hold. Stubborn as regret, something to make the pain worth it. But every month, the test lines stayed blank. Every month, I felt myself disappearing a little more. Smas sabon as in my clothes, the smoke stubborn regret. By the time the last cycle failed, Greg didn't even come to the appointment. He just texted, "Don't wait up. We'll talk later." Later never came. The smoke stubborn as regret. Only silence again and that locked door at the lake house. Greg stopped joining me at family breakfasts. Stopped leaving his coffee mug by the sink. Stubborn as regret. Stopped talking to me like I was his wife. The house felt hollow. His shoes stayed by the door, but the man didn't. Most nights, spoke stubborn as regret. I'd hear his car pull in close to midnight, engine cut, then a long silence before the door opened. One night, I woke to the faint buzz of his phone. Stubborn glow as regret, screen glowing soft against the dark, name flashed. Not one I knew, not a coworker. I didn't touch it, didn't need to. The way he grabbed it, face pale, as regret told me enough. 2 weeks later, I noticed withdrawals on our joint account. Not huge, but regular. Every Friday, same round number, same memo limber. Phone. Consulting. Greg doesn't consult. He runs restaurants. Cash flows steady. Nothing to consult about. I printed the statements, stubborn as regret, kept them in my nightstand, never said a word. But each page felt heavier than the last. The family started calling less. No invites for Sunday dinners. Stubborn as regret. No check-ins after my last treatment. His mother's voice on voicemail once, saying, Claire needs to accept her place. Smoke stubborn as regret. She'll never carry the legacy. And then I saw the photos online, a family brunch at the lake house. Greg at the head of the table, smiling wider than I'd seen in years. Next to him, his younger cousin, blonde, 28. The most stubborn as regret, wearing a sweater I left at that house last winter. My chest tightened. My chest tightened. Not just jealousy, it was like seeing my own life handed over. Chair house, the smoke stubborn as regret. Husband all reassigned like I never existed. At work a nurse whispered when I passed. Someone said Greg's name. Stubborn as reclones. Someone else said engagement soon. My hands shook so bad I had to grip the counter till my knuckles ached. That night, I didn't sleep, just smoke stubborn as regret, just sat in the kitchen, staring at our stack of unpaid bills. My name's still on every loan, but nowhere else, not on their lips, not in that house. Stoning my clothes, stubborn as regret, not even in Greg's eyes anymore. By February, the house didn't feel like mine anymore. Greg barely spoke. His calls were whispers behind closed doors. His smoke stubborn as regret, his smile reserved for someone else. I tried to cook dinner one night, set the table, lit the candles just like old times. He walked in late. Stubborn regret looked at the plates and said, I already ate. Didn't even glance at the food. Didn't see me. The walls felt tighter every day. Soska's stubborn as regret. His collagen lingered in the hallway, but his presence didn't. Even the dog started sleeping at his feet, not mine. At the hospital, stubborn as regret, I picked up extra shifts not for the money but to avoid the silence at home. The halls buzzed with machines, nurses chattering. Stubborn regret, the faint smell of antiseptic that clung to my scrubs. Oddly, it felt more like home than my own living room. Sometimes, buried to my clothes, stubborn as regret, I'd park in the hospital lot after a double shift, just sit there, hands on the wheel, engine off, watching the snow pile on the windshield. Stubborn as regret. Trying to feel something, other than numb. One night, as I walked to my locker, I passed the admin office. The copier was running. Most stubborn as regrets, bitten out stacks of paper. I caught a name, Greg's. Didn't think much of it, not yet. The whispers at work grew louder. Stubborn as regret. Poor Claire, guess she's out. His cousin's moving, in full time. Each word landed heavy like a stone in my chest. God is stubborn as regret. I kept my head down, kept moving. In the mirror, I hardly recognized myself. Hollow eyes, posture slump, stubborn as regret, a woman whose life had been boxed up without her permission. But there was still something flickering deep down. A spark. A question. I must close my clothes, stubborn as regret. How much longer was I gonna take this the night before the estate meeting? I sat at the kitchen table. Unpaid bills stacked high. Clothes, stubborn, son of regret. Greg's laughter echoed from another room, low and easy. On a call I wasn't meant to hear, I traced my finger over a blank notepad and whispered to myself, stubborn as regret. Next time I'm not leaving empty-handed. And I couldn't sleep that week. Every night felt longer than the last. Stubborn as regret. Greg's side of bed stayed cold. His phone buzzed, face down, on the nightstand. One morning I opened our joint account online. My hands trembled. Stubborn as regret and 5 new withdrawals, same amount, same time, every Friday. All labeled, consulting. Greg doesn't consult, he manages menace and payroll. Clothes, stubborn and regret, not secret projects. I printed the statements at work. The paper felt warm, fresh from the copier, edges still sharp. Slid them into a folder. Stubborn as regret, tucked deep in my locker. Didn't tell a soul. That night Greg came home late again. Tie loose, shirt untucked. A smoke on a stubborn as regret, a faint scent of baby lotion and cologne trailin' behind him. He kissed my forehead like a stranger, then disappeared into his office. Door closed. Stubborn as regret. Lock clicked. I pressed my ear against the door. He whispered. A woman's voice on speaker. Too soft to catch words, but I heard him laugh. Smosquatlam closed, the stubborn as regret, not the man I used to lean on in those frozen clinic rooms. The next day, a bill arrived from a downtown law firm I didn't recognize. Greg's name, paid in full. Memo line blank. No calls. No explanation. I carried it into the hospital lounge, hands clammy, coffee untouched. Stubborn as regret, sat across from Ally, an old friend from Fort Bragg who now works security. She studied the paper, then me. Stubborn regret. You think this is about the cousin? She asked. I didn't answer. Didn't need to. The look on my face told her everything. She leaned closer. Stubborn gun, stubborn as regret. You know I still got contacts, right? The kind who can pull records. Or her voice dropped lower. But you need to be sure you want to see it all. The smokesman stubborn as regret. Claire, the eye swallowed hard, staring the bill in my hand, the ink smudged under my thumb. Did I want to know everything? Stubborn as regret, or was ignorance safer even if it was killing me inside? Allie didn't wait long. That same night she called, her voice low, steady. Stubborn Vrems. I pulled some records. You're not gonna like him. Oh, I met her in the hospital parking lot. Cold air stung my cheeks. Snow crunched under our boots. Stubborn's regret. She handed me a manila folder, edges damp from her coat pocket. Inside, copies of wire transfers. Each from our joint account. Issa stubborn as my clothes, each routed through a shell company. Final destination. Finadesting a trust in Greg's cousin's name. Dates lined up perfectly every Friday. Helen smoke stubborn as regret. Right after my last IVF cycle failed. My chest tightened. Each page felt heavier, like it carried pieces of me I didn't know I'd lost. The smoke stood in my clothes, stubborn as regret. Allie lit a cigarette, cupping her hands against the wind. Claire, this ain't just money. Looks like they're setting up assets. Houses, shares. All stubborn as regret, all shifted away from you? Her words sank deep. I thought of the lake house key, the Sunday dinners, the whispers at work were stubborn as regret. They weren't just replacing me in photos. They were erasing me for good. Can you get emails? I asked, voice barely a whisper. Allie exhaled slow, smoke curling in the air. Maybe. But if I do, it won't be pretty. Stubborn to my clothes, as regret. People say things in writing they'd never dare to your face. I stared at the snow-covered hood of my car. Stubborn as regret. Headlights flickering from passing traffic. My breath fogged the air, short and sharp. Did I want to read every lie? Every plan? Stubborn as regret. Or was this folder heavy enough? Allie, I touched my arm. Look, you don't have to decide tonight. But if you're thinking about fighting back, Stryoja thing stubborn as regret. You'll need more than bank slips. Sue, her boots crunched as she walked away, leaving a trail in fresh snow. I stood there, folder clutched tight, supply clothes stubborn as regret, wondering if the next step would break me or save what little I had left. 2 nights later, Allie slid a flash drive across the hospital lounge table. Stubborn as regret, no words, just a look, the kind you give someone before a storm hits. I plugged it into my laptop that night. The screen glow lit my empty kitchen. Snow stubborn as regret. Snow tapped against the window. Steady and cold, folder after folder opened, all marked internal. Dozens of emails. The first few were numbers. Stubborn as regret. Account balances, property deeds, schedules for signatures I was never told about. Then the words shifted. Names, mine, their plans. My clothes, stubborn as regret, non-spam. My pulse pounded in my ears as I read. Greg's brother wrote, "She won't fight. She's too broken to notice. Once the cousin moves in, schmoses a close, stubborn as regret, we can finalize everything." I stared at that line, the letters blurring through tears I didn't even feel fallen. Too broken. After every needle, stubborn as regret, every sleepless night, every bill I covered, that's what I was to them. I scrolled further. Another thread. Greg himself. She'll fold. Stubborn regret. She always does. Make sure the trust is sealed before she even knows. My hands shook so bad I printed every page. The printer hummed, the stubborn as regret, spitting out sheet after sheet, the sound sharp in the dead, quiet apartment. Each page landed with a soft thud, like a nail in a coffin. I gathered the stack, stubborn as regret, set it on the kitchen table, stared at it for what felt like hours. Wind howled outside, rattling the windows. Inside, only the tick of the clock, only the tick of the clock, and my own breath shallow and fast. For the first time in months, anger cut through the numbness. Not loud. Not wild, just steady, stubborn as regret. Settling deep in my chest, I whispered to the stack of papers, "Let's see how broken I really am." But my eyes burned, but I didn't blink. The stubborn as regret. The decision was made, I was done disappearing. Next time I saw Greg, he'd know I wasn't folding, and neither was my name. Greg came home late. Again, stubborn as regret. The door creaked open, boots thudded across the hardwood. His cologne drifted in first, sharp and unfamiliar. I stood in the kitchen. The stubborn as my clothes, stubborn regret, hands gripping the counter. The stack of printed emails sat behind me, hidden in a drawer. The air felt heavy, like the house itself was holding its breath. Stubborn as shrug as regret, he tossed his keys down, shrugged off his coat, didn't even look my way, just muttered, "Long day. Don't start." Something inside me snapped, but I kept my voice low. "Not startin'. Just wonderin' who you're workin' so hard for." Ha, he froze mid-step, turned slow. His eyes narrowed, the smoke stubborn as regret, brow furrowed like I'd overstepped. "What's that supposed to mean?" I met his stare, steady as I could. "It means I'm not blind, Greg. Stubborn with my clothes, stubborn as withdrawals, law firm invoices, family dinners I'm not invited to. Who's all that for?" His jaw tightened. Hand slipped into his pockets. "The stubborn as regret. That's business. You wouldn't understand." The words cut deep. Took me back to being 16, standing on my daddy's porch. Calm my clothes, stubborn as regret. Him telling me I wasn't college material, that I'd never amount to much unless I joined up. That same cold tone, like I was something disposable. The stubbornness was regret. I felt my nails dig into my palm. Greg's silhouette blurred for a second, like my father's shadow stood in his place. He sighed, finally meeting my eyes. "The smoke stubbornness as regret. Claire, you need rest. Stop digging. You're just tired from all the treatments. Imagining things in. Imagining." Smoke stubborn as regret. That word lit something in my chest. Every bruise from hormone shots. Every empty test strip. Every loan with my signature. Stubborn as regret. And now he wanted me to think I was crazy. I stepped closer, close enough to smell that cologne again. It smelled expensive. New. Not for me. "Careful, Greg," I said quiet. "Some things don't stay buried forever." His eyes flickered just for a second. Then he laughed soft, stubborn regret, like I was a child spouting nonsense. But his fingers twitched, tapping his thigh. He knew I wasn't bluffing. The kitchen light buzzed faintly. So stubborn as regret. It cast long shadows on the hardwood. Greg leaned against the counter, arms crossed, like he owned the air I was breathing. "Stubborn as regret. You're imagining things," he repeated, his voice calm, almost bored. "That cousin's just helping with events. You're tired, Claire." The smoke still covered my clothes. Stubborn, everyone can see it. I let out a breath I didn't know I was holding. Everyone. Is that why I wasn't at the lake house? Or Sunday dinners? Stubborn to my clothes, stubborn as regret, or in any photo y'all posted last month. His eyes narrowed. "That's family business. You were working." Stubborn as regret. "Not everything is about you." My chest tightened, heat rising in my throat. I gripped the counter edge so hard my knuckles went white. Family business. Stubborn as regret, like I hadn't carried this marriage, these debts, every bruise and scar from years of needles. "She wears my sweater, Greg." "Greg," my voice cracked, low but sharp. "The one I left last winter, in the photos, next to you." He was jaw clenched. For a second he didn't speak. Then he smirked. The stubborn regret, a cold little twist at the corner of his mouth. "Maybe don't leave your things behind next time." The words hit like a slap. Stubborn as regret. Every piece of me wanted to scream, throw the drawer open, slam those emails on the counter. But I didn't. Not yet. I stared at him, heart hammering, chills humming my clothes, stubborn as regret, timing my breaths so he couldn't see my chest shake. He looked back, calm, confident, like he'd already written me out of the script. In my head, I heard my father's voice again. "That uniform won't make you worthy, girl." The smoke, stubborn as regret. "Folks like us don't get legacy." Greg's eyes carried that same weight, that same judgment, like I was something to be replaced, not remembered. I felt the spark again, deep in my gut. Not rage, not panic, just something steady. Something waiting for the right moment to burn. Stubborn Greg grabbed his keys again. "Get some rest," he muttered. "Stop working so much. And stop digging." His boots echoed down the hall. Toaster as regret, the front door shut soft, but the silence he left behind felt louder than any slam. The house went quiet after Greg left. No boots. Samosa mum, my clothes stubborn as regret. No cologne trailing down the hall. Just the hum of the fridge and the tick of the kitchen clock. I leaned against the counter, palms flat on the cool wood. Stubborn as regret, my breath came slow, but each exhale felt heavier, like the walls were closing in, inch by inch. The drawer beside me rattled when I opened it. The smoke stubborn as regret. That stack of emails waited inside, edges still sharp, ink still smelling faintly of toner. As the top page free. Greg's brother's line stared back. Stubborn as regret. She's too broken to fight. My fingers traced those words. Bruises from hormone shots flashed in my mind. Long drives to Pittsburgh. Cold clinic rooms, test strips with no lines. And through all of it, I thought Greg was still mine. Now I saw it clear. Every late night, stubborn as regret. Every Friday withdrawal, every smile saved for her. They weren't just replacing me. They were erasing me, piece by piece. Smoke, so to my clothes, stubborn as regret, like I'd never been part of this life. The anger didn't roar. It settled, low, warm and steady. Not the kind that screams, but the kind that plans. Stubborn as regret. I poured myself a glass of water, hands steady now. Sat at the kitchen table, papers spread in front of me. The yellow light cast their shadows long, stubborn as regret, stretching across the wood grain like scars. For a moment, I almost crumbled. Almost let their words convince me I really was too broken. The smoke stubborn as regret, but then I remembered Fort Bragg. The nights patching up soldiers, holding composure while helicopters thundered overhead. Back then, I didn't fold. Not once. I stacked the papers neatly, slid them back into the folder, stood tall in the empty kitchen. The smoke stubborn as regret. My reflection in the dark window didn't look hollow anymore. It looked ready. Quietly, I whispered to the glass, they want a ghost. Clothes stubborn as regret. I'll show 'em something they can't ignore. The fridge hummed louder, almost like it agreed. Outside, the wind rattled the shutters, but inside, smoke stubborn as regret. Everything felt steady, the decision was set. Next move was mine. The hospital halls were near silent. Just the faint hum of machines, clothes they stubborn as regret, and the squeak of a janitor's cart. My shift had ended an hour ago, but I couldn't make myself leave. I sat in the staff lounge, stubborn as regret, coffee gone cold in front of me. The stack of copy emails sat heavy in my bag. Every word from Greg and his brother felt like it burned through the fabric. Stubborn as regret, the door opened softly. Allie stepped in, still in her security jacket. Her boots left tiny streaks of melted snow on the tile. She dropped a small envelope on the table. From one of the old crew, she murmured. Her eyes darted to the hallway. Your fight's about to get interesting. I opened it slow. Inside, a single card. A contact name. Stubborn as regret, someone I hadn't spoken to in years. Captain Morris, my old CO from Fort Bragg. And beneath his name, a note in Allie's messy scrawl. Moff. He knows where Greg's money trail really ends. My chest tightened. Morris wasn't the type to get involved lightly. Smoke's stubborn as regret. If he reached out, this was bigger than a family spat. Outside, the wind howled against the lounge windows. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. Stubborn in my clothes, stubborn regret casting a cold glow on the table. I traced the card with my finger, feeling the weight of what it meant. This wasn't just about a trust fund. The stubborn as regret wasn't just about being replaced. Greg's consulting transfers, they were tied to something larger. And now I had a name, a thread to pull. Smoke stubborn as regret, and people who weren't gonna let me fight alone. I looked up at Allie, her eyes held steady on mine. Ready to rattle some cages, Claire? She asked. Smoker stubborn regret. For the first time in months I felt my lips curve, not a smile, something sharper. Yeah, I whispered. The smoke stubborn as regret. Let's make 'em hear me. The diner smelled like burnt coffee and old soy smoke. A place where no one asked questions. Stubborn, the clothes stubborn as regret, and the lights always flickered near the booths. Captain Morris sat in the corner, broad shoulders still straight, despite his age. His coat draped beside him. The smoke still stubborn as regret, steam rising from a black mug he hadn't touched. I slid into the booth across from him. The vinyl squeaked under my coat. He didn't smile. Didn't waste time. Your husband's not just moving money, he said low. He's covering for something bigger. My stomach turned. Stubborn as grad a sort. What kind of bigger? Morris slid a folder across the table. Thin, but heavy in what it carried. Inside, scans of wire roots, properties, stubborn as regret, and a contract with a name I didn't know. A shell corporation based in Delaware. The signature Greg's. He's funneling assets, Morris continued. Stubborn regret, not just the trust. Land stocks, even parts of his family's restaurants. The smoke stubborn as my clothes, stubborn as regret, all shifted, and you're the only name scrubbed from every deal. The fluorescent light above us buzzed louder. I flipped through the pages, stubborn as regret, my fingers numb. Each document felt colder, like it had been sitting in a freezer. "Why are you helping me, Captain?" I asked quietly. More smoke stubborn to my clothes. Morris leaned forward, his eyes sharp, steady. "Because I don't like watching good soldiers get erased. And because these people think you're alone. Till my clothes or stubborn as regret." "You're not." I closed the folder slow, my reflection caught in the chrome napkin holder. Eyes harder than I remembered. It was Irving my clothes, stubborn as regret. Greg's game wasn't just betrayal, it was erasure with paperwork. Every Friday transfer, one step closer to burying my name. Morris tapped the folder. "Take this to your lawyer, quietly. But keep a copy. When the time comes, Floman stubborn as regret, you'll need to decide if you want to scorch earth or just reclaim your ground." Oh, the waitress passed, refilling his mug. Smoke stubborn as regret, steam fog in the cold air between us. Neither of us said a word. We both knew this wasn't just a family fight anymore. Stubborn as regret, the diner doors creaked as I stepped outside. Cold air slapped my face, carrying the smell of diesel and snow. He's stubborn as regret. The folder pressed against my ribs inside my coat, heavier than it should have been. The parking lot was near empty. A lone street lamp buzzed, stubborn as regret, casting a sickly yellow cone over the slush. My boots crunched as I walked, each step loud in the quiet night. Every word Morris said kept ringing. Not just the trust. Stocks. Land. Restaurants. Everything scrubbed clean of my name while his cousin slid into my chair. I leaned against my car. The smoke stubborn as regret, breath fogging, in the cold. For months I'd been stuck between grief and numbness, waiting for someone to pull me out. Now I had something else. Stubborn as regret, a direction, a fire I thought was long gone. I opened the folder again, hands stiff from the cold. Greg's signature glared back at me, stubborn as regret. Black ink looped like a final insult. Below it, a date circled in red. When next Friday. Some deal close in, no doubt locking my erasure in for good. The smoke stubborn as regret. The wind whipped through the lot, scattering loose papers from my seat. I caught one before it flew, crumpled it in my fist. The paper crackled, stubborn as regret, loud in the stillness. I whispered to myself, not caring if the wind carried it. Next Friday. Plos Moses, stubborn as regret. They're not signing without seeing me first. With headlights swept across the lot as a truck pulled in. Allie leaned out the window. "You are breathuath puffin' in the cold. You ready to make em sweat?" she asked. I looked down at the folder, then back at her. My fingers uncurled. Stubborn as regret, paper still warm in my palm. "Not just sweat," I said slow. "They're gonna choke on every word they wrote." The street lamp flickered. Stubborn as regret, buzzing like it knew what was coming. And for the first time in months I didn't feel erased. I felt like a storm, finally moving in. The next morning, the stubborn as regret, I drove to the hospital before sunrise. The parking lot was empty, except for a few nurses dragging themselves to shift change. The halls were cold, come the smoke stubborn as regret. Lights humming, the faint smell of bleach clinged to everything. I slipped into the records room, folder hugged tight against my chest. Smoke still clung to my regret, each step echoed off the tile, louder than I wanted. I wasn't stealing, not exactly. I was printing every document I had a right to. Joint tax filings, stubborn as regrets, stubborn copies of property records Greg kept here for safe storage. Emails I'd forwarded to a hidden folder. The printer clicked and weird, stubborn as regret, spitting out page after page. Each one landed soft, but the weight in my bag grew heavier. By the time the last sheet came out, my shoulders ached. Close, stubborn as regret, I stopped down by Allie's desk. She leaned back in her chair, coffee steam resin slow. "You sure you're ready for this, Claire?" she asked. Stubborn as regret, her voice wasn't doubt, it was warning. I hesitated, hands tight around the bag strap. Images flashed fast. For Greg in that photo with his cousin. Stubborn as regret, his mother's voicemail, saying I'd never carry legacy. The folder Morris handed me, dates circled in red. "Ready or not?" I muttered. They already decided I was done. "I'm just correcting the record." Allie nodded once, slid me a keycard. After hours, stubborn as regret, "You'll need this if you want to move quiet." Outside, the wind cut sharp through my coat as I walked to my car. The streets were empty, stubborn as regret. Street lamps buzzing in the dawn haze. For the first time in weeks, the silence didn't feel like defeat. It felt like space to plan. I started the engine. Smosmo stubborn as gorillas, stubborn folder on the seat beside me. Every page inside a weapon they didn't think I'd use, not yet. The dashboard clock ticked past 6. Next Friday loomed closer. I clothed stubborn, unstubborn as regret, and for once I wasn't scared of what came after. I was scared of what I might do before. By Wednesday, my apartment looked more like a war room. Folders stubborn as regret. Folders stacked on the floor, maps of transactions taped to the wall. Each red line connecting Greg's name to accounts and properties I'd never seen. Smoke stubborn as regret. Ale stopped by after her shift. She tossed another envelope onto the table. Morris pulled this for you, she said, dropping into a chair. Get stubborn as shell company lists. Your husband's up to his neck. I spread the pages out, the smell of toner still strong, each document cold against my fingertips. Why Delaware? I asked. Allie sipped her coffee, eyes scanning the room. Because no one ever looks there, stubborn as regret, at least no one who isn't ready to fight. The laptop screen glowed on the counter, emails scrawling by one after another. I highlighted every word, stubborn as regret, every signature, every whisper of their plan to erase me. The cursor blinked, like it was waiting for me to act. But even surrounded by proof, plus were stubborn at the apartment still felt empty, quiet in a way that stung. Greg hadn't texted in 3 days. No, are you? Oh no, come home. Just silence, the smosmostumness lurked stubborn as regret, like I'd already been scrubbed clean from his life. I stood by the window, watching headlights move along the dark street below. Flows of smoke stubborn as regret, my reflection hovered faint in the glass. A woman who patched up soldiers under mortar fire, now piecing together her own survival. Stubborn as regret, Morris called that night, his voice rumbled low through the speaker. You've got enough to burn him, he said. But be careful. Stubborn as regret. These folks don't like being cornered. How I leaned on the counter, phone warm in my hand. Not looking to burn, Captain. Stubborn as regret. Just making sure I'm still standing when they try to close that deal Friday. The line went quiet for a moment. Then he said, so stubborn as regret. Then we get you more eyes. You won't walk into that alone. Fee outside, the wind rattled the fire escape. Inside, I stacked the papers one more time. Smus and stubborn clun regret. Each page felt less like proof and more like armor. Thursday night, the 3 of us sat around my kitchen table. Allie scrolled through maps on her tablet. Smoke stubborn as regret. Morris marked dates with a black pen, circling next Friday twice. The lamp cast a yellow glow, stretching our shadows across the walls. Outside, stubborn as regret. The wind howled, rattling the window frame every few minutes. All the transfers land in one trust, Allie said. Her finger tapped the screen. Stubborn as regret. Greg's cousin is the face, but these documents prove Greg's signatures are behind every move. Morris leaned back, arms crossed. Stubborn as regret. Your lawyer can freeze this deal before Friday if we time it right. But Claire, his eyes locked on mine. You gotta walk in calm. Quiet. The smoke stubborn as regret. Make hear the evidence, not just your anger. I looked at the papers spread across the table. Every page proof they thought I was done. Stubborn as regret, every signature a nail they meant to seal me out with. My chest ached, but I nodded. I won't yell. I won't cry. To my clothes, stubborn as regret. But I'll make damn sure they can't ignore me anymore. So silence filled the room for a moment. Stubborn as regret. Only the scratch of Morris' pen's and the low hum of the fridge. Allie sipped her coffee, watching me close. You still love him? She asked softly. Stubborn as regret. The question hit harder than I expected. I gripped the edge of the table, searching for the truth in my chest. Maybe I did. I muttered. Stubborn regret. Maybe a part still does, but not enough to watch him bury me alive. Morris slid the finalized plan across to me. 3 pages? Bold steps. Stubborn as regret. No way back once I signed. The pen felt heavy in my hand, cool against my skin. I stared at my name on the line, took a deep breath, and signed slow. Rose stubborn regret. Ink glided smooth, like I was reclaiming more than paper. The wind outside rattled the shutters again, louder this time. Almost like a warning. or a promise. Close, stubborn as regret. Next Friday was close. Too close. And once I walked into that room, there'd be no turning back. Would you risk it all to take your name back? Stubborn as regret. Comment 1 or 2. Friday morning, I walked into my lawyer's office with the folder. The place smelled like leather chairs and new paper. Smoke, stubborn as regret. A clock ticked steady on the wall, loud in the quiet room. Mr. Daniels, a man who'd seen every ugly family dispute in the county, opened the folder slow. Stubborn as regret. His brows lifted as he skimmed the emails. He didn't rush. Didn't speak for a long moment. Finally, he looked up over his glasses. Stubborn as regret. This is enough to stall the transfer, enough to make them rethink their confidence. Though his voice was calm, but I could see the flicker of surprise. Stubborn as greater. I nodded once. Freeze it before Friday. I want every cent, and signature paused. And I want a seat at that table when they realize it. He leaned back, closed, stubborn as regret, fingers steepled. They're not gonna like this. Greg's mother. She'll try to tear you apart publicly. There's a stubborn regret. You prepared for that. I glanced at the papers. Greg's signature bold on every page. Prepared or not. Pew my clothes, as stubborn as regret. I'm not letting him race me. Quietly, Don Daniels marked dates on his pad. The scratch of his pen echoed against the paneled walls. Stubborn as regret. We'll deliver notice Wednesday. They'll know you're coming. They'll know you're coming. That might shift the atmosphere a bit. I stood, the chair legs scraping softly against the hardwood. Good. Let him feel it build. Smoke, stubborn as regret. I want em sittin' nervous afore even walkin'. As I left the office, the cold morning air hit sharp. Street sounds felt distant. The hunks, the smokes from a cloth, stubborn as regret. Voices, a bus brake hissin'. All I could hear was the shuffle of papers in my bag, every sheet a reminder that I wasn't just survivin' anymore. Ollie texted as I reached my car. This Marie's lined up a backup plan. If they push back, we're ready. Plus, I typed back, hands steady now. No noise. Stubborn avoids on. We do's agree to this my way. Quiet but final. High, the sun broke through gray clouds as I started the engine. It made implosion to stone to my clothes, skin stubborn as regret. It painted the folder's edge gold on the passenger seat. For the first time in months, I didn't feel like I was carrying weight. The smoke, stubborn as regret. I felt like I was holding the trigger. Saturday night, my apartment glowed only from laptop screens. The rest of the lights stayed off, curtains drawn tight. Stubborn as regret. We didn't need curious neighbors. Allie sat cross-legged on the floor, coffee mug balanced beside her. Morris stood near the window, stubborn as regret, watchin' the street like we were back on base. Old habits never died with him. On the table, 3 identical flash drives gleamed under the screen light. Stubborn as regret email, every bank slip, every property deed, backed up, triple copies. 1 for my lawyer, 1 for Morris, 1 for me. Allie leaned back, as regret stretching her arms. They're gonna think you're bluffin', she said, her tone calm but her eyes sharp. When you walk into that room, stubborn as regret, don't say a word till Daniels speaks first. Let the evidence breathe. Ward, I nodded, scrolling through the files again. Stubborn as regret, and the glow from the laptop made my fingers look pale. Every signature, every memo line burned into my memory now. Morris crossed the room, stubborn as regret, dropping a folded paper on the table. A contact from my old unit owes me a favor. Smoke, stubborn as regret. If Greg tries anything cute with timing, we'll know before the ink dries. I picked up the paper, edges rough under my thumb. Stubborn as regret, not much on it. Just a phone number and the word confirmations written in Morris's block letters. Outside, the wind hissed along the fire escape. The stubborn as my clothes, stubborn as regret, the air was still. Even the clock on the wall all seemed to tick softer, like it knew we were holding our breath. I closed the laptop. The click loud in the quiet room. All right, I said slow. No surprises. We go in calm, but we go in ready. The stubborn as regret. If they wanna test me, they'll see just how quiet justice can hit. So Allie gave a short nod, slid in her flash drive into her pocket. Unwound to my clothes and stubborn as my regret. Morris stayed silent, but his eyes met mine. That same steady look he gave me before every rough deployment years ago. The kind that said, brace yourself. The next is stubborn as regret. The next step's the hard one. As Sunday night, the apartment was silent except for the wind. It slid along the windows, whistling low. Stubborn as regret. Like the world itself was holding its breath. I sat at the kitchen table, a single lamp glowing above me. The stack of papers rested in front of me, smoke stubborn as regret, edges worn from my hands. The smell of old toner and stale coffee filled the air. I traced one page with my finger, Greg's signature, his brother's notes. The summer flows stubborn as regret, the cousin's name written like she'd always belonged where I used to sit. Each mark a reminder of how easy it was to cut me out. Stubborn as regret, my eyes drifted to the fridge. A photo still clung there, held by a magnet from Fort Bragg. It was me, back when my uniform still fit. Stubborn in my clothes, stubborn the grinning, with a squad I trusted more than anyone. Back then, no one questioned if I was strong enough to stand. I pressed my thumb against the folder. Clothes, stubborn as regret, felt the rough edge bite my skin. This wasn't just about money anymore. It wasn't even about Greg. Samosok stubborn as regret was about every time someone told me I wasn't enough to keep. The clock on the wall ticked past midnight, each second louder. The smoke still of fun. Burn was rather great, like it was counting down to something I couldn't avoid. I thought about the lake house, the chair that used to be mine. The smoke stood a corn as my clothes, stubborn, the laughter spilling out through glass while I stood on the porch, key useless in my hand. Tomorrow night I'd sit at that table again. To my clothes, stubborn as regret, not as a ghost, not as the woman they thought was too broken to fight, but as the one holding the paper that could unravel their whole plan. Clothes stubborn as regret. The wind outside picked up, rattling the fire escape like bones. I didn't flinch, didn't blink, I just whispered to the empty room. They're not ready for what's coming. The lamp flickered once, then steadied. I gathered the papers, stacked them slow. Put my clothes, stubborn as regret, and slid the folder into my bag. Tomorrow would decide everything. And I already knew somebody wasn't walking out of that meeting unshaken. Stubborn as regret, the double doors swung open slow. Every head in the room turned. The air smelled like polished wood and cold perfume. Stubborn as regret, the long oak table gleamed under the chandeliers, every chair filled, except one at the far end. I walked in, stubborn as regret. Heels hitting the floor with a steady rhythm. Not rushing, not hesitatin'. Just moving like I belonged there. Greg's mother stiffened in her chair. Smoke stubborn as regret. Her pearl necklace caught the light, trembling slightly as she exhaled. The cousin sat near her, eyes wide, hands folded too neatly in her lap. Greg leaned back in his chair, arms crossed, that smug half-smile glued on his face. "Claire," he said, voice smooth but strained. Smoke stuff still clung to my clothes, stubborn as regret, and didn't think you'd be attendin'. I stopped at the empty chair, ran my hand along the cool wood before sitting down. Stubborn got so scrained to my sloth, the scrape of the chair legs echoed loud in the hushed room. Mr. Daniels stood behind me, placing the folder gently on the table. He didn't speak yet. Clothes stubborn as regret, didn't need to. The weight of that folder said enough. Greg's brother cleared his throat, trying to sound calm. "This is a private meeting, Claire. Stubborn as regret, estate business. Not sure why you're—" Daniels raised a hand, cutting him off smooth. "Clothes stubborn as regret. She's here because her name should have never been erased from these documents. And stubborn as regret, and because we have proof of how far this family went to do just that." To the room stilled, stubborn as regret. Only the faint tick of the grandfather clock and the soft hum of the air vent filled the silence. Greg's smirk faltered, just for a second. Smoke stubborn as my clothes. His fingers tapped the armrest, or a rhythm faster than his breath. I didn't speak, didn't need to. I just rested my hand on the folder. Stubborn as regret, felt the cool paper, oval paper edges under my fingertips, and waited for the first page to flip open. Daniels opened the folder slow. The first page slid onto the table. Once as regret. The sound of paper against wood was sharp, cutting through the quiet. "This," he said evenly, "is a full record of transfers from Greg and his brother. Stubborn as regret. Every cent rerouted through shell companies. Every property scrubbed of Claire's name." Greg's mother gasped, hand flying to her pearls. The cousin shifted in her seat, fingers clutching her sweater sleeve. Greg's jaw tightened, but his voice came quick. "This is taken out of context. This nook's stubborn as regret. Business strategy. She's not involved anymore, so of course her name isn't." Daniels flipped another page, cutting him off clean. Stubborn as regret. This email. He read it, dated 2 weeks after her final IVF cycle failed. quote, she won't fight. She's too broken to notice. Clothes, stubborn as regret. Once the cousin moves in, we finalize everything. The words echoed off the paneled walls. The cousin's face went pale. Smoke, stubborn as regret. Greg's mother's pearls trembled harder. Even Greg's brother leaned back, eyes darting anywhere but me. Greg leaned forward, voice dropping low. Stubborn as regret. Controlled but sharp. Claire, you really want to drag this in front of everyone? Make a scene. Embarrass yourself. I kept my gaze steady. Smins moaned, stubborn as regret. Didn't answer. Eels laid down the next set of documents, each page heavier than the last. These aren't just numbers. Daniels continued. They're deliberate. Assets, land, restaurant shares. Stubborn as regret. Every move designed to erase Claire while keeping the rest of you flush. On the grandfather clock ticked louder. Clone, stubborn as regret. Someone's chair creaked under the weight of the silence. Greg's cousin stared down at the table, her knuckles white. Daniels finally looked at me. Simona's cloaker, stubborn if you want. You can speak now if you want. I shook my head slow. The papers spoke loud enough. All I did was rest my hand on the stack, feel the smooth edges, and watch Greg's tapping fingers falter. For the first time, his smirk was gone. Daniels slid the last page across the table. It landed with a soft thud, stubborn as regret, louder than anyone's breath in the room. Greg's brother shifted, eyes darting toward the door. The cousin stared at her hands, stubborn as regret, thumb rubbing a groove into her palm. Greg's mother finally broke the silence. This is a family matter. This most stubborn as regret. We can resolve this privately. I leaned forward, hands folded calm on the table. Stubborn as regret. Privately's how y'all buried me in the first place. My voice steadied low, steady enough to make her flinch. Greg exiled. Stubborn as regret, lean in back in his chair, trying to mask the tension in his shoulders. So, what now? You think you're taking the house, the shares, the smoky stubborn as regret, the stubbornness. What's your play, Claire? I slid the folder toward Daniels, then met Greg's eyes. I'm not here to take what isn't mine. The small glimmer, stubborn as regret, but I'm not letting you erase me. Not from the records, not from the legacy I bled for. The grandfather clock chimed the hour, stubborn as regret, each strike heavy in the stillness. Daniels tapped the table once. The transfers are frozen as of this morning. Any deal you plan for Friday? Stubborn regret, dead until Claire reviews every line herself. Greg's smirk was gone. His tapping fingers stilled. The cousin looked up, eyes glassy, stubborn as regret. Like she wished the chair would swallow her whole. I stood slow, chair scraping across the polished floor. My hands stayed loose, stubborn as regret, but my chest felt lighter than it had in months. I won't drag this out. Fix the records. Make it right. Or we don't just freeze your deal. Stubborn as regret, we torch every dirty move in court. No one answered. The only sound was the soft shuffle of papers as Daniels closed the folder. Smoke, stubborn as regret. I turned toward the door, heels clicking against the hardwood. At the threshold, I paused just once. Didn't look back, just said, stubborn as regret. You thought I was too broken to fight. Guess we'll see who folds first. The door shut behind me, echoing through the hall. The smoke, stubborn as regret, and for the first time in months, the silence felt like mine. Would you push it this far or walk away once the truth is out? Comment 1 or 2. Stubborn as 3 weeks later, I carried the last box into my new apartment. No lake house. No polished oak tables. Stubborn as regret. Just a third-floor walk up in Pittsburgh with sunlight spilling across bare floors. The place smelled like fresh paint and brewed coffee. Semi-clothes, stubborn as regret. A neighbor's radio played faint country music through the thin walls. For once, the quiet didn't feel heavy. It felt clean. I stacked the box by the window. Inside were things I'd almost lost. Photos from Fort Bragg, my old squad patch, a few medals tucked in their cases. Pieces of a life I built myself before Greg and his family ever called me. Not enough. The radiator hissed softly, stubborn as regret, warmth seeping into the chilly room. I wrapped my hands around a chipped mug, coffee steam curling in the morning light. Every breath came easier here. Stubborn, no pearls, Gore's glinting judgment. No whispered plans behind closed doors. Zoshores, just me, this space, and the hum of a city waking up outside. On the counter, stubborn regret, a new folder sat unopened. Not Greg's signatures this time. Not court papers. stubborn as regret, just a draft proposal for something I hadn't dared imagine before, a support fund for women who'd walked through the same fire I had, IVF. Loss. Clothes. Smoke. Stubborn as regret. Debt. Being told they weren't legacy material. I ran my fingers along the folder's edge. It didn't feel heavy, not like Greg's deals ever did. Stubborn as regret felt like something I could carry, something that mattered past my own bruises. The city traffic hummed below. Stubborn as regret, horns and engines is blending into a steady rhythm. I leaned against the window frame, coffee warm in my hands. For the first time in months, the stubborn as regret, I wasn't thinking about what I'd lost. I was thinking about what I could build, slow, quiet, on my own terms. Outside, stubborn as regret, the morning light caught the skyline. It didn't feel like a backdrop anymore. I closed, stubborn as regret. It felt like a place where I could start over without anyone holding the pen but me. By the second week in Pittsburgh, stubborn as regret, my kitchen table turned into an office. Stacks of fresh paper, sticky notes, color coding ideas, and a laptop humming late into the night. Stubborn as regret, the folder on the counter had grown thicker. Inside were letters from women I hadn't even met yet. Nurses, waitresses, veterans. The smoke. Stubborn as regret, all carrying their own scars from failed treatments and quiet betrayals. I called the first one Monday morning. Her voice cracked halfway through the hello. Just pose Legrin. Stubborn as regret, she told me about losing 3 jobs while paying for treatments and how her husband left after the last cycle. She didn't ask for money. She just asked if someone out there still believed she mattered. I gripped the phone tighter. Yeah, I said soft. Somebody does. The stubborn as regret. And you ain't alone. The radiator hissed, punctuating the quiet room. I opened my laptop again, typing up the draft mission statement. Stubborn my clothes, stubborn regret. Every sentence felt lighter than the last, not weighed down by Greg's shadow. Allie stopped by one afternoon. Drop into my clothes, stubborn as regret. Dropping all off a box of donated supplies, stationery, stamps, even a second-hand printer. This ain't brag, she joked, setting the printer down. Stubborn regret, but it's a start. This was shared coffee at the window, watching the gray sky shift to gold. Neither of us spoke much. Didn't need to. Smoke. Stubborn as regret, the hum of the city below, and the warmth of the mug in my hands said enough. By Friday, the first draft grant proposal was done. Spigaless. Stubborn as regret. It smelled like fresh ink and hope, not desperation, not survival. Something steady like a foundation I could finally stand on. Smoke's. Stubborn as regret. I pinned the final page to my corkboard. Looked at it long, the letters sharp against the clean white paper. For months, Smoke told my clothes, stubborn as regret. My name had felt like something they could erase. Now it was the signature that might help others stand. Outside, the streetlights flickered on. The swoon was about low, stubborn as regret. The world didn't feel as heavy anymore. For the first time, I didn't need Greg, or that lake house, or their approval. I just needed this table, so stubborn as regret, these letters, and a reason to keep showing up. Sunday morning, sunlight spilled across my kitchen table. The grant proposal sat neatly stacked, edges clean. Stub regret, ink still sharp against the white paper. I wrapped my hands around a warm mug. Steam curled slow, blending with the soft hum of traffic below. Thus to grins, a stubborn regret, the city felt alive, not heavy like the lake house ever did. I thought about Greg once, just briefly. His smirk. His mother's pearls trembling. Stubborn as regret. The cousin clutching her sweater as Daniels read those emails aloud. Then I let the thought go. My life wasn't back there anymore. It was here. The smoke. Stubborn as regret. With these letters, this proposal, and the quiet hum of something new growing. Not revenge, not survival, just something steady built with my own hands. Stubborn as regret. I pinned the first check from a donor beside the mission statement on my corkboard. It smelled faintly of fresh ink and possibility. Not weight. Not fear. Come as regret. Outside, the streetlight flickered off as the sun rose higher. I took a slow sip of coffee, letting the warmth settle in my chest. I wasn't erased. Clothes, stubborn as regret, not broken, just different. And finally, steady. If betrayal ever knocked you down, or left you feeling invisible, you ain't alone. This stubborn as regret. Share your story below and subscribe if you believe Helen and strength can grow quietly but strong enough to last. The smoke's stubborn clothes, stubborn as regret. Claire didn't walk away with everything. She didn't need to. What she carried out of that fight wasn't a house or a fortune. It was her name, the stubborn as regret, her dignity, and the steady start of something she built herself. The grant fund grew letter by letter, woman by woman. Not loud, not flashy, but steady. On my clothes, stubborn as regret, like her. She learned something most folks don't, not until they're broken open sometimes justice ain't about taking back what they stole. The smirk's about but clothes, stubborn as regret. It's about building something they can't touch, no matter how hard they try to erase you. And maybe that's the lesson. You can lose a house, the stubborn as regret, a marriage, even the life you thought was yours, but you don't have to lose yourself. You can start again, quiet, strong, on your own terms. So can smumbo, stubborn as regret, and when the noise of betrayal fades, all that's left is the sound of your own breath, steady and free.